Our presenter, Reverend Jennie Thomas, is an ordained Presbyterian minister. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from the University of Alabama in Huntsville and received her Master of Divinity from Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur, Georgia. She completed her CPE chaplaincy training with Georgia Baptist Medical Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and is a board-certified chaplain with the Association of Professional Chaplains. She received her Master of Social degree at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. During her MSW, Reverend Thomas became more familiar with vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, and burnout. She is also an ACPE certified educator. During the last 27 years, Reverend Thomas has presented lectures on clinical ethics, self-care resiliency, and managing vicarious trauma. Reverend Thomas is the spiritual care director at NCH, where she serves as a chaplain and certified educator. She is also an active member of Avow Spiritual Advisory Board. Now to discuss how to identify and cope with compassion fatigue is Reverend Jennie Thomas.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you to Avow and to Avow Spiritual Advisory Board for inviting me for this presentation, and also for Annalise for helping us get all coordinated with our Zoom webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can start the PowerPoint. Yeah, come on. There we go. Okay. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm a little nervous. I imagine there's some community clergy on who have been doing worship on Zoom for a few months, and so you're aware that I'm talking to a computer screen, or you're just talking to a camera. So just bear with me, as this is my first time doing a webinar. So we're going to be talking about identifying and coping with compassion fatigue. We are going to have some questions that you're going to have the opportunity to answer. So I invite you on your smartphone or tablet to put the following in your web browser: pollev.com/Jane Thomas 140. That's my legal name, is Jane. Or you can text Jane Thomas 140 to 22333. I encourage you to leave your application open. There's going to be more than one question throughout the presentation. I'll give y'all a second to go ahead and get that up on your phone. You do not have to download the Poll Everywhere app in order to do this. So just giving you a second to get that taken care of. All right, so we have a couple of objectives today to identify at least 3 symptoms of compassion fatigue, and to learn at least 3 coping skills to help you manage that compassion fatigue. I know there'll be some of you who say, well, I'm not suffering from compassion fatigue, but those that you work with may be. So this will be a helpful presentation, hopefully, for you and for those you serve. And then why this matters to me. So as Mark said, I've been over 25 years in hospital chaplaincy. And I began noticing compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma actually in myself after about 8 years in chaplaincy. And I knew that if I didn't do something different, that would make for a very short career, because I'm in this for the long haul. So some of the challenges that I have faced have been Katrina. I lived in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf South. So we had 7 feet of water in our house. So everything gone. Every sermon I'd ever written, gone. And everybody I knew had lost just about everything. So clearly a big challenge to continue to offer spiritual support to our patients, families, and staff in the midst of having had so much loss myself. And then now we have the challenges of COVID-19, where people are encouraged to be socially distant, which is an important part of staying safe and having this virus not overtake us. which means it's harder to connect with folks. And we're using things like Zoom. We were supposed to do this presentation in March, and a day and a half, 2 days before the presentation, there was decisions made about in-person gatherings. So I'm glad that y'all came back and joined us again. So working in the hospital, one of the things that happens is we focus on temperature. So I want to take your temperature right now. So how do you feel right now? This doesn't have to be, oh, I feel great, I'm excited, I'm happy. You may be those things, but you may be having a tough time. You may be struggling with some things. And that's okay. So I encourage you to go ahead and fill in the survey of how do you feel right now. For those of you who joined by text, I don't know that you have the opportunity to do this, but I'll take a minute just to see what kind of answers we're getting to how do I feel right now. Again, for anyone who's joining us now, in your web browser, on your phone, or on your computer, you can put in pollev, POLLEV.com/Jane Thomas, JANE, Thomas, THOMAS 140. And that's how you get to the Poll Everywhere information. We do have some other questions later in the presentation that won't be picture oriented. So for those who joined by text, you'll be able to do those as well. So it looks like we're starting to get, we've got some who are, I'll say, are doing 5, doing great right now. We've got a good handful who are doing pretty good. And we've got probably, it looks like the most folks in our group right now doing okay. I think that's pretty real. So I'm going to move on to our next slide. Now, we're talking about compassion fatigue. This is a chance for you to put in words of what, when you think of compassion fatigue, what do you think? So if you want to type in a word, it'll show up. And I'm doing this as well. And this is a word cloud. And you can respond on this as many times as you'd like. So y'all can see tired and overwhelmed are 2 of the big things that are coming up. Overextended, exhaustion, alone, coping. Now, if you're putting in more than one word, it separates them. Resentful, exhaustion, numb. Well, y'all all have a very good idea about what compassion fatigue is. My hunch is that some of y'all have experienced this, and you're not alone. Just know that. Uncertain. All right. Have to click in the right place. Sorry about that. So y'all are right on target. Compassion fatigue is about the loss of the ability to nurture. It's the decreasing ability to help due to being unable to distance ourselves from the emotions and pain of others. It's the debilitating weariness brought about by that repetitive empathic response to pain and suffering. It's a result of absorbing and internalizing the emotions of our clients and sometimes our coworkers. So as a hospital chaplain, going in and offering support to people who are suffering, people who have never been separated from their spouse, and now they're in the hospital and their spouse isn't able to come in, not even saying that, I mean, for people who don't have COVID-19, this is the case. And that pain and that fear and that isolation that others are having, and holding that in my virtual hands, holding that in my hands, and the impact that that has on me. I'm saying me because it's something that I've experienced, but it's something that each of us experience. I know that we've got some, I heard some folks from David Lawrence, and I know that y'all have a very high capacity of clients that are seeking treatment and receiving treatment. And I imagine y'all are going through some of that right now as well, as we all are, not to just say David Lawrence has that. So this is what compassion fatigue is, and this is what we're going to be working on today. So the second part is secondary or vicarious trauma. And this was something that when I was in social work school, I began to explore understanding that more, and how that relates to compassion fatigue. So secondary trauma or vicarious trauma is a repercussion of caring for others who are in emotional pain. There are negative changes in beliefs and feelings about self and other. Vicarious trauma intensifies over time, and it is all pervasive. Goes through emotions, relationships, worldview, everything. And there's three different levels: feeling vulnerable and fear, difficulty trusting, and a changed worldview. So for somebody who always sees the glass as half full, now they may be seeing the glass half empty. So instead of being someone who is always positive, it's that person is now negative. And this may be from one specific experience, but it may be from repetitive experiences of a similar nature. So in just looking at comparing compassion fatigue and secondary trauma, compassion fatigue happens over time. It's specific to caring for others experiencing trauma and emotionally challenging conditions. And it may include secondary trauma. On the other hand, secondary trauma is triggered by indirect or direct exposure. And by that, I mean, I can be the one providing that care, or I can be the one offering support to the people who are providing that primary care in that setting. Secondary trauma doesn't meet the full criteria for post-traumatic stress. And it may or may not exist with compassion fatigue. And with compassion fatigue, it happens over time. With secondary trauma or vicarious trauma, it can be a sudden onset or it can be cumulative. So it can be one event that happens that sparks that secondary trauma. We're going to look at some of the, first we're going to do risk factors, sorry. So our next survey is about risk factors. So we've got 5 risk factors. So empathy, insufficient recovery time, unresolved personal trauma, isolation and fragmentation, lack of resources. So, and let's see. Oops. All right, we've got a lot of folks who are posting 1, it looks like. It was supposed to tally, y'all, but it's not. So much for technology. So we've got folks who are experiencing some risk factors, which I expected. I expected that everyone participating today would have at least one risk factor. I mean, a risk factor is that we have empathy for others. A risk factor is not having sufficient recovery time, being isolated and fragmented, having a lack of resources, all of these are things that many of us have experienced and are aware of on a daily basis. I see some folks are still putting their answers in. Okay. Our next, we're now going to talk about signs and symptoms. So some of the emotional signs and symptoms are simple. Depression, frustration, anxiety, hopeless, mood swings, intrusive thoughts. That really is more for vicarious trauma. Poor concentration, irritability, alienation, isolation, anger, prolonged grief, nightmares, dissociation, and numbness. So if you're having any of these symptoms, you need to pay attention. It's important for those of us in caring professions to pay attention to what's going on with us as we care for others. So being aware that we've got some risk factors because we care about other people, and there may be some ways that some of these signs and symptoms can be not helpful. So dissociation or numbness can lead to, I'll say, unkindness. If I can't feel anything or I'm disconnected from what is going on for me and for others, then there's going to be a lack of compassion. And then we have some behavioral signs and symptoms. So something that often can happen can be abuse of chemicals, and that can be alcohol or drugs, prescription or street drugs, spending less time with clients, tardiness, absenteeism, making errors, being critical of others, depersonalizing patients. So in the hospital, talking about the patient over in bed 2, or talking about the COVID patient, COVID 2. So that person no longer has a name or a family or anything. They're just the person in the bed with COVID. Being sarcastic and cynical. That's a tough one because I have a strong sense of sarcasm in me in a general time. So being aware that when my sarcasm is being used to be cutting to someone. Keeping poor records, avoiding certain clients, missing appointments, lacking motivation. If it's a one time, oh, I was late to work. Okay, all of us are late to work occasionally. But if I find it difficult to get up and get to work on time 4 days out of 5 in the week, okay, there's something going on for me in terms of compassion fatigue. I have gotten empty, and I need to find ways to fill myself back up so that I can continue in this caring work. Physical signs and symptoms. So for some, it's a rapid pulse, it's insomnia, I just can't sleep, it's fatigue, I wake up exhausted, reduced resistance to infection, weakness and dizziness, stomach aches, having trouble remembering things, weight change, that can be either gain or loss, and just kind of, I'll say, tummy aches, gastrointestinal complaints, high blood pressure, neck, back, muscle aches, constipation. So yes, all of us may have had one of these at some point, but it's looking at a combination of things. So like I said before, if I'm late to work one time, I'm late to work one time. But if I'm late to work continually can't get to work on time 4 days a week, I'm waking up, I'm exhausted all the time, I may be looking at compassion fatigue. And then spiritual signs and symptoms. So it's not just those mental, physical, emotional, it's also about my spirituality. So it's doubt concerning one's beliefs or values, feeling angry or bitter towards God, withdrawing from fellowship, All of these things are ways that we demonstrate our compassion fatigue. So being aware of that. So I want to spend more time in our presentation talking about what we can do to mitigate those signs and symptoms. So we're going to talk about 3 main coping skills: the schedule hack, boundary rituals, and self-care planning. So the schedule hack actually is something that comes from a book called Stop Physician Burnout by Dyke Drummond. And I went to a presentation with him last year. And he is a wonderful presenter and does a lot of work with physician burnout, works with physicians with one-on-one and in groups. And so I loved the schedule hack. So our next survey is, do you have personal time on your calendar? Is that going to the gym, dinner with family, meditation, prayer, anything? So let's see. I got to move our picture so I can see all the results. All right. So I'm glad that never had the lowest percentage. That's awesome. Occasionally and frequently come in second with the next highest. With the highest. Whoops. Sometimes jumped in there. And then always is well, now it's moving. Well, y'all can see this. But frequently is actually now doing really well. So one of the things that Dyke Drummond talks about is, if you don't have it on your calendar, it's not going to happen. And for me, that is so very true. All right, thank you very much. So it says, anything not on the calendar you were carrying is not going to happen, period. If you want to have a life, always carry your life calendar with you. Practice saying no, which can be really hard. No, I'm sorry, I have a previous engagement. Nope, it looks like that time is booked. That time's already taken. That's my date night, no can do. And then the other piece that he talks about is scheduling spontaneity. And I'm like, how do you schedule spontaneity? And what he says is, you put a time on your calendar to be spontaneous. Sounds silly. So I have a time on, and I'm making this up because I haven't done a good job of scheduling spontaneity. Friday evening, scheduling spontaneity with friends. So it's like, okay, we're going to do something, but we don't know yet what it is. But that's the time that we're going to figure it out and do. If I don't have something written down, I'm not going to remember it. So that's even fun stuff. So keep your calendar, write it down, and practice saying no. One of the things that was really hard for me when I first was ordained is as clergy who's in a specialized ministry, there are churches and pastors who go on vacation or get sick and can't be there on the Sunday, and they need somebody to fill in the pulpit. And I don't have a pulpit. So when I moved to New Orleans, I was in New Orleans 3 days when I got my first phone call from somebody asking me to preach for him. I was like, I didn't even know y'all knew I was here. And I couldn't think of a reason to say no, other than I was starting a new job and that was a lot on me, and I didn't think that was a good enough answer. I didn't think that was a good enough reason to say no. So for years, anytime somebody asked me to preach, if I didn't already have something on my calendar for that day, I said yes. And I've learned, no, I need to look at my whole schedule and look if I have the energy to do that, if I have the time to prepare a sermon, if I have the time to get there and to do what I feel like is a good job. And I've had to learn how to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not available. Please call me again. Because no doesn't mean no forever. It means no right now. And what I mean by that is not call me back for the same date in a week, but call me back for another Sunday down the line. So practice saying no. It's not an easy thing to do. And I don't have to actually even give a reason. And if I've got my calendar with me, then I can tell you. Or let me check my calendar. I'm not sure that I have the time for that. So schedule hack. Get those things on your calendar too that are helpful for you. So going to the gym, is going to the gym on your calendar? Is that an important part of your self-care? Is that an important part of taking care of yourself? Having dinner with your family. A wide variety of doing something fun that's not work related. So I feel like I'm flying through my presentation. So boundary ritual. So this is something that I'd say I preached for a really long time is, what is your boundary ritual? How do you leave work and get home? And Dyke Drummond actually brought up Mr. Rogers' transition from work, and I actually watched the video yesterday. I mean, I remember how he comes in and he takes off his work jacket and hangs it up in the closet. He gets his zip-up cardigan and he takes off his work shoes and he puts on his tennis shoes and he sings his little song. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Won't you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Or something along those lines. I'm not saying you have to have a song. You might. But how do you transition from work to home? I mean, as somebody that works in the hospital, I have, for as long as I can remember, when I get home from work, I change my clothes and I change my shoes, because I don't wear my work shoes around for fun. And right now with the COVID virus, it's even that more important to change out of those clothes that I've worn in the hospital all day. So think about your boundary rituals. You know, what is it that you do to shift your gears from being at work to being at home? Knowing that there are times that you still have to be available. Last week I was on call from Monday through Sunday. But that didn't stop me from doing my boundary ritual when I got home, knowing that I still could get called, but that's sometimes part of the job. But that didn't mean I'm not going to make that change, that I'm not going to make that boundary. So I'd like for y'all to take a minute and think about, what is your boundary ritual, and put your feedback up so we can see. There may be a boundary ritual that you have that we all need to go, ooh, I'm going to take that one. Change clothes, don't have one, working out, gym. Listen to a fun podcast series on my way home. Excellent. Walk the dog, he demands it. Alone time. Leave work cell phone in the garage. Closing my laptop at the end of the workday, working from home. I think working from home brings its own set of issues with boundary rituals. Music in the car, the bedroom, changing clothes, turning off work phone, sit on the patio. Amen. Change clothes, shoes off, and music on the way home. Showering too. One thing I left out is wash my hands. That's actually the first thing I do when I come in is I wash my hands and then change my clothes. Turning off the phone at 8 p.m. Turning off work phone when the workday is over. Reading daily devotional. Y'all got some great ideas. Y'all do some good things for boundary rituals. Kicking off my shoes. Play with my dog. Distance, hugs and kisses with family and change clothes. Simply closing my laptop. Listen to music. Walk, tennis, and fishing. Got a very active person in this group. Time with spouse. Feed the cat. I bet that cat demands that feeding just like the dog demands attention. Escaping into a book. Thank y'all for all your wonderful answers. Blasting music on the way home. Oh, you're the one that does that. I hear the bass on your radio. Watching something mindless on TV. All right, y'all are getting into this, but I'm going to move on to our next. Going on a walk every evening in my neighborhood. Don't answer any phone calls after 10. All right. So now we're going to spend some time on managing compassion fatigue through self-care goals. So I want y'all to think about your original mission and goal. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you in the position you're in? Why are you in the vocation that you're in? This is the big picture of why do you do what you do. Why am I a chaplain? I am a chaplain because I wanted to listen people into speech. As a chaplain educator, that is one of my roles, and that is something that I'm passionate about, of being present with people and walking with them on their journeys and helping them find speech. And so on those times when I think, oh my gosh, why on earth am I doing this? It's an opportunity for me to revisit my original mission and goals. Why do I do this? And let me always go back to that. And then the next part of that is, are the tasks that I'm doing in my role helping me achieve my original mission and goals? And there have been times where I've gone through that and I thought, no, it's no longer doing that. And it was time for me to move to a new position. It doesn't mean that every year I want to do that. But I need to regularly be aware of what it is that I'm passionate about and how I'm staying engaged in that. And then looking at goals in 4 domains. So physical domain, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Mental being more internal, emotional being external or relational, and then spiritual being about meaning making and can be faith-based. So looking at how to create goals that are SMART goals, those specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So a physical goal might be, I'm going to go to the gym every day for an hour and a half and keep my heart rate above 150 for 45 minutes. Well, that's more than likely not going to happen. It is specific. It is measurable. It might be achievable down the road. It's certainly relevant to keeping in good health, and time bound, not really. But I'll say a smarter goal would be, I'm going to go to the gym for 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week for the next 6 weeks. And then at the end of that 6 weeks, I can go, okay, I've knocked this out the park. I can either change that goal or say, no, I want to keep this a little longer. Or I can go, okay, now I want to try going 5 days a week for half an hour. Or I want to go 3 days a week for an hour. But if I make it so astronomical that in the first few days I don't do it, then I go, I didn't do that, forget it, moving on. So having those SMART goals is an important part. So I want to give y'all some examples, some self-care ideas. So physical, so rest on one side or swimming. Figure we got some water around here. There's an opportunity to do some of that. We might not rest as much as Charlie Brown does. He sleeps probably 20 hours a day. He's an old guy. He's about 15 years old. And then some ideas about mental is finding those places that nourish your soul. So the beach nourishes my soul. So I've got a sunset out on the water and a sunset from land. Gives me an opportunity to meditate, to pray. Journaling can be something that can go in this area. And then emotional or relational. So spending time with a close friend, having a party. So over here on the left is Lightning and Echo hanging out together, spending quality time. They like to do that a lot. And then over on the right is Lightning having a birthday party. Yes, I had a birthday party for my dog. It was a lot of fun. And clearly those boys and girls were having fun. And knowing that right now you can't really have parties, but can you have people, 2 or 3 people come over and sit in the driveway and have drinks and be able to see others. I know some folks are having weekly family Zoom meetings just to talk about how things are going and seeing each other's faces and connecting in more ways than they had before. So I know that there are other, these are just a few of mine. And then spiritual. My chaplain interns and I walked the labyrinth, which was a wonderful experience. It was guided for us, some training and education about walking the labyrinth, and participating in weekly services. I know there are people having Bible studies and prayer groups and everything online. AA meetings online, another area of spiritual self-care. So I want to go ahead and give us the opportunity to ask questions.
And by the way, thank you, Reverend Thomas, for sharing that information. This was a topic that not only the Spiritual Advisory Board at Avow thought was extremely relevant, even before everything has happened with the coronavirus, but even more relevant now, but also many of the professionals who I collaborate with in the community, some of whom are on this webinar. It was really nice to see all the descriptions and types of help that people can receive. And we do have a question, which is, can your original mission change over time?
Oh, absolutely. I think as we learn and grow in our lives and in our work, absolutely, our original mission and goals can can expand, can change, can even shift gears? That excellent question. Sounds like somebody's going through some questioning right now.
And I do want to mention, let me just see, somebody wrote something into the chat. And it was just somebody commenting that Avow has a beautiful labyrinth on our campus. And I had noticed a picture of that earlier. I don't see any other questions. I did get another comment from Pastor Carl over at the Amigo Center in Immokalee when we were going over boundary rituals and people saying what they do. His comment was he needs one. So hopefully he got ideas from all those who participated in answering that question. Are there any, since I don't see any other questions, one thing I could do is I could put up my contact information and let people know if they want a copy of the webinar, if they want to share that. We can do that, as well as some future webinars that we have coming up. And let me just see, there's something else in the chat box. Thank you for this wonderful experience. I'm a certified labyrinth trainer if you want to arrange the service. And that's from Kimberly Becker.
Excellent. So somebody texted me a question, somebody that I know texted me about my bird here. And it's one of my friends who we play cards with, and Pierre is the prize for the winner. And we haven't played cards in some time, so he was asking when I was going to release Pierre back to his rightful owner. And I do believe that is a challenge, that somebody is trying to tell me that he's going to win in cards the next time. We'll see.
And let's see.
Do I need to stop sharing so you can share?
Yes.
Okay.
For a couple other comments in the chat box. There's somebody who, back. This is a thank you from Elba. She works at Golden Gate Senior Center. And she found this very helpful. By the way, there's several organizations that had more than one people register that I'd like to acknowledge. We had the David Lawrence Center, Hazleton Goodwill Industries, the Alzheimer's Support Network, many of my coworkers at Avow. So I just wanted to thank them for participating in this webinar, as well as everyone else who had joined us. Also, the Collier County Sheriff's Office had several people that had registered for the event. And thank you for that comment, Elba. Here's a question also from Annalise Smith at Avow. Should an employer take any responsibility for addressing compassion fatigue with their staff?
So I think that's an excellent question, Annalise, and I think yes. In the hospital, we as chaplains work to address the compassion fatigue of the staff. We created retreat rooms for the staff, and we had to scale them back as things started opening, but places for people to go and have an opportunity just to not be in the midst of everything. With there was meditation things, there was information about breathing, which is important. There was stuff to color. There was mandalas and also just regular coloring. We made sure that, and continue to make sure that we tell folks about our employee assistance program, because we're in a caring profession. And I'm guessing everybody on this webinar is in a caring profession, and the opportunity to have somebody to unburden to is so important. And having access to those resources, working in a hospice, I mean, the stress level in hospice is high. Patients are in the dying process. I know that y'all have palliative patients as well. But caring is exhausting, and finding ways to attend to that on a regular basis, I think, is the role of leadership. So that's a really long answer to say yes.
I have another question, and this person asked, first comments that these are great ideas for maintaining balance and taking care. Any suggestions for recovery once you're in the dumps?
So it takes time. The compassion fatigue didn't happen necessarily overnight. And so the cure or preventing, managing, or mitigating isn't going to happen overnight. But name it, and be very clear about the kinds of things that you think that you need. If you're exhausted all the time, maybe you need to take a vacation so that you can get some rest and then get a little bit more balance. If you're giving out all the time and never filling yourself back up, then you're not going to be able to continue to give out because there's not going to be anything left. So finding things that nurture you to help you maintain, and then finding things to fill you up so that you can continue. For me, the beach is my healing place. So if I can just go and look at the beach, if I can just sit on the beach and watch the waves and listen to the waves, that for me goes a really long way. Different things are for different people, but finding those things, and you can also ask for professional help. You can use your EAP, you can use a counselor to help you manage and work through some of the compassion fatigue, especially when you've gotten to a place where it's pretty tough, because now it's pretty tough just in general without anything else.
Great. And we have a question from Reverend Dr. Lewis Thompson, who's involved with Vanderbilt Presbyterian. He's a retired reverend there. And he was also registered for the original presentation we had in March. So Reverend Thompson, I appreciate you joining us today. His question is, what about a mentor?
If you know somebody that does excellent with self-care, I think that can be a good place. Just glancing down at some of the comments, it looks like someone talks about an accountability partner. I think that can be very helpful to have somebody to say, let's look at this. In having a mentor, you really do have to have somebody who is excellent at self-care. Because if you've got somebody that's not so good and they're mentoring you, and that could be disastrous, because they might say, oh, well, yeah, you need to just push through and do. Pretty much anytime you hear you need to push through and do isn't probably very helpful for us. There may be times that we do that, but accountability partner is probably more helpful than mentor.
Okay, and Tara McGraw from our Spiritual Advisor Board has a question. If you think someone is suffering from compassion fatigue, what suggestions for speaking to them about it? What suggestions would you have for speaking to them about it?
Well, I think in a caring conversation, just say, gosh, reflect back what you're hearing. I hear you're saying you're exhausted all the time. How are you finding time to care for yourself? How are you finding time to get rest for yourself? These are the things I'm hearing from you. And you may get, oh, no, that's just the way things are. And sometimes being the person that raises that up and holds that mirror, it's not very well received. And so know that they may not like to hear that. But that it can be so important. It's such a caring thing to do, to say, you know what? This is what I'm seeing, and I'm concerned. Not just this is what I'm seeing, but that, and I'm concerned.
Okay, and another person on our Spiritual Advisor Board, Reverend Diane, has sent a question. So I appreciate that you are at Avow actually helping us to address how to best care for ourselves as we care for others. How about putting on some music and dancing on the beach, socially distanced from Jennie, or wherever we can?
Excellent. Thank you, Diane. I think that's an excellent idea.
Well, some of the rituals, a lot of them involved changing clothes and music. I saw a common pattern there. We also have a website. It's avow.tv that has several videos. It started as an educational website for caregivers, but once the coronavirus threat came about, we realized there was a lot of isolation, so we expanded it to include music videos, relaxation, meditation type videos, laughter therapy, all different types of activities. So I had a note from someone to mention that as well. And let's see, we have another question. Okay, this is from Catherine Shoref, again from our Spiritual Advisory Board. Because we don't know when or if this because we don't know when or if this COVID crisis, I guess, will end, it seems even harder and more necessary to care for ourselves. So that's a comment from Kathy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was with a patient this week, and she happened to be in one of the first floor rooms, and her family came to the outside of the building so they could see her, and that boosted her spirits so well, so much. It's like, oh, I know you can't be in here with me right now. I know you would be, and I'm so glad that you're here for me, and being safe. But yeah, Kathy, that's so true. We don't know how long this is going to last, and it's so important to care for ourselves. And it's even harder. I mean, hey, let's go spend some time from friends, but stay 6 feet apart and make sure you wear your mask, which are important things. That's one thing I haven't addressed today that I would like to raise up is wear your mask when you're out in public. Wash your hands. Keep socially distanced. And I'll say keep physical distance. You don't have to be, if social distance is staying 6 feet apart, then that's fine. If social distance is not connecting with people, don't do that. It's so important to stay connected. We've got phones, we've got texts, we've got video chats, we've got an opportunity to sit in the driveway and be in the presence of our family and friends, and making the effort to have those kinds of connections is so important. I recall after Katrina, which has been quite a few years ago, that nobody really was texting. But after Katrina, text became a regular way to communicate with people because it was the only way people could get through to one another. So staying connected.
Okay, and let's see if there's any other. There is one more question regarding how to get a copy of the video. And I will go ahead and before I put my information up, I just want to see if there's any more questions or comments. And if not, I'll go ahead and share this screen with my contact information. So you can contact me at mark.beelan@avowcares.org. And if you're interested in any upcoming events, we have several webinars that are veteran related. One is PT resources for veterans. And another one is veteran benefits at a national cemetery. And you can get that information at avowcares.org/registration. And on that page, you can directly register if it's something you're interested in. So I will leave up my contact information. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Reverend Thomas, once again, for sharing this interesting, I think, extremely useful information. And if anybody has any questions or comments, please contact me at any time until I get home. And I'm the one that mentioned that I leave my phone in the garage. So, but I do get back to people within a day or so. So we will get back to you. If somebody requests the video and I don't have it immediately, that's the only holdup. Once I do have access to a link to the video, I will share that with whoever would like to receive that. So thanks again, and have a great day.